Hey everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have an awesome guest, super cool guy. His name is Damon Dohar, and he's a pretty big deal. He's the superintendent over at a school district in Ohio. I believe you pronounce it Youngstown?
Youngstown, Ohio.
Yep,
Youngstown,
I
Ohio.
blew it. Okay, so
Close enough.
feel free to take over. Can you tell us about your district and your journey
Sure.
to become a superintendent?
Sure. My district is Mineral Ridge, Ohio. It's a smaller side. It's I like to call it a hamlet in between two larger towns. It's a nice little town, very bedroom community place. We have about 1,000 students from preschool through 12th grade. So it's a good place to be. I've been here for 13 years. I don't know if I'm a big deal. I'm getting bigger. If I don't watch my weight, I'll be much bigger. That'd be the only about big deal part of me that's there. Grew up in the greater Youngstown, Ohio area, which is if you have Chicago here,
Mhm.
which you're from, Mike, right? And New York is here. Youngstown is right in the middle.
Oh,
It
cool.
was once called Mobster USA. It was a steel mill capital of the world at one point in time. We're about an hour from Cleveland and an hour from Pittsburgh. Exactly. So we're right on that PA border.
Cool.
Um, we were a very blue collar town. Growing up with steel mills, and steel mills. Our community what changed from then it was steel mills and cars. So we used to have a very large General Motors plant that made vans and made cars and made Chevy Cruises and everything for years, and that is no longer there. The steel mills once employed close to 20,000 people. Now they probably employ maybe 1,000.
Mm.
So it's that old Rust Belt. It's exactly there. We were well known for great boxers, great football players, and a lot of good athletes because when it's a blue collar town, you tend to get those type of people to work. It's kind of one of those towns too that you have a problem, you deal with it in the family. That's kind of how we do it. Very there's a lot of cultures that are here, as most blue collar towns do have, because people came here to work years ago. I'm of Lebanese descent. My grandmother was Lebanese, my grandfather was Lebanese, my mother was Italian and German. So I have a lot of anger, a lot of fire, and I'm never wrong. So it's one of those things that we deal with. My journey to be a superintendent was, I don't know, I started off, graduated school from a small school around here called Teal College, International Business Spanish. I was meant to be in a big city, and I ended up in a small city. So, this is where my family was from. So I went to law school afterwards because I wanted to be a big time lawyer. I graduated law school in 94 and then decided that it wasn't for me, and then became a teacher. I became a Spanish teacher and I loved every
Mm.
second of it. Then I became an administrator because it's kind of the personality I have. And then I've been a middle school principal. I've been a special ed coordinator. I've been a human resource director and now a superintendent for 13 seasons. I equate as like a head football coach. You just keep, as long as you're employed, you're winning. So
That's awesome. And right before the podcast, you were sharing something about your take on middle school being the make it or break it time frame.
yes,
That's really, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I know our listeners would too.
yeah, middle school is you get to that fifth grade level. Your kids 11, 12, in that region, and they're starting to realize that they're not just they have to be themselves. They're trying to figure all that out. And I've always said is it was my favorite time. I was a high school teacher that then popped down to be a middle school principal. And
Mm.
just the uniqueness and the difference of those short 4 years, you know, at, at my age, 4 years is nothing. But at their age, that's half of their life.
Right.
And, in their growth and their maturation and their ideas, um, really they do develop in that time period. I used to always say it was the worst thing in the world I used to do is compliment a kid at that level, because then the next day they would go out and do something terrible. So like I'd have kids that were in trouble, and I'd say, hey, you're doing great. And they would the next day they would mess it up. So then I just always put the caveat that you're doing great, but now that doesn't mean screw it up. Okay. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't think about it, but just know that I'm really proud of everything you do. And
Yeah.
and I learned this in education years ago, is that a bit of success for anybody can go an exceptionally long way. And in middle school, it goes a very long way. I still coach my kids. He's in fourth grade. I coach his basketball teams, and that's basically that middle group. And it's a lot of confidence building, a lot of like, you're doing great, keep at it, but we have to get better here. And I believe that now I'm kind of like the conduit between, you have to be constructively criticized because you're going to have to learn that in life, because people do that all the time. And then, but you have to learn that it doesn't mean that you're bad. It just means that that's one thing we have to get better at, because we always have to be better. And and I take that, obviously I'm a big sports guy, so that's kind of what I was raised on. You know, but I utilize that in a lot of lessons with kids. But middle school kids, you need love, you need a lot of caring, patience, which is not something I always have. But and then they just need to know that they're not bad. They're okay. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how life is. And and I've been blessed to work in a suburban school district, in urban school districts, and bigger urban school districts, smaller urban school districts, and they're all kind of the same. The urban kid needs a little bit more love because they've been through a lot more than we've been through. You know, um, the middle school kids go through a lot, and especially now in the day of social media, it's changed a lot. Of how, when I got picked on in school, which it happened, I got picked on. Um, I was kind of the perfect guy to pick on because I wasn't mean, I wasn't small, but I wasn't so big that if I did something to you, you were gonna walk away probably. So like I did it, and I was raised never to hit anybody in anger, and do the right way of doing things, walk away. you know um so like I took my picking ons, from being a little bit thicker, on the thicker side of things, to curly hair, which I've lost a lot of that though.
No, it
But
looks good, man. It looks
you've
cool.
kept yours, Mike, which is nice. But and those things, and I do have to proclaim my one probably biggest problem was probably my best attribute at that time is I'm as about ADD as they humanly come. So like I really forgot things really quickly and moved to the next step. I mean, it was kind of one of those double-edged swords with that. And and the thing that my family really instilled in me, and that my wife and I really work hard to instill in our kids, is that your drive, your work ethic is what's more important than the ultimate outcome. Because you know I'm not one of those superintendents that can quote Shakespeare. I'm not one of those superintendents that quote all these wonderful literary agents. I quote the greats. I quote Lou Holtz, Rocky Balboa. It doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. I tell kids, it just matters how many times you get up. Doesn't matter how hard you get hit. It just matters, are you going to get up? And I go, that is a huge, and that's funny saying, it's such a huge piece of success. You have to get ready for that in your life, is that you're going to get knocked down and you got to get back up, and your work ethic is what will get you there. And I think that is something that we really emphasize at my school. It's not always the outcome, it's the journey. Because listen, I can't change you from a D student to an A student right away, but I can change you from a D student to a C student, which is a great strive. And that should never be lost. And
Yeah.
hey, just because it's a C doesn't make a difference, man. I have a lot of former students that were C, D students that are outstanding multimillionaires that have been wonderful assets to tell kids like, hey, this guy got on my case all day long because he saw something in me. And that's the thing that we really work. I have to say, my staff at Wethersfield, which is the name of our school district, is Wethersfield local. Most of us Mineral Ridge, but our kids, our teachers at Mineral Ridge really do try to help kids like that. That's kind of been one of the emphasis since I first got here, was like, remember, it's a kid. They're dealing with kid things that are adult things nowadays.
Yeah.
We've always had it, but there seems to be more prominent stuff now. But like, just give them that bit of confidence, that one step. And it's not just the teacher, it's from the cook, the custodian, the bus driver, to the secretary when they walk in the door. I mean, I owe a bus driver my life, because I was what they call a latchkey kid. I had a key around my neck. My dad was, unfortunately, was sick very much in my youth, and he was in the hospital. My mom had to go to work, so I was the last one in my house. I fell asleep waiting for the bus. I heard it coming. I ran out the door. The door was wide open. I remember running to the bus, and I asked the lady, I gotta shut that door. My dad will kill me. My mom will kill me if I keep that door. She goes, honey, go back, close that door, meet me around the other corner.
Wow.
And that lady saved my life because my parents didn't know that, and they still don't know it. They're gone now, so they're in heaven. So if they did hear that, I apologize. But I mean, that was that little thing is something I remember from 40 plus years ago. Not to date myself, but it was a while back. And the teacher that just said, "Hey, you mean something to us. You have that meaning," and that's what kids. I can't emphasize it enough, man. We miss the positive sometimes more because we have to critique and we have to do things, but there's always a positive in something. So,
Absolutely.
I'm a yeller because it was in my family, that was a conversation, some families are much more quiet than mine was. But I will say, like when I coach kids, I tell them, you're going to hear me yell, good and bad at the same time. So I yell just as excitedly for a good thing that I do for something that we need to get better at. And, I think it's part of it all.
I think it's so great what you just shared, Damon. And I love the fact that you were so authentic in sharing that you were bullied and you struggled with ADD.
No,
I could feel that because I struggled with ADD as well, and being bullied as well. I didn't hit my growth spurt until later in life, so it was the whole and struggling with ADD and OCD, and that lack of focus as a kid, and other kids noticed it. So first of all, I'm sorry that you got picked on, and because I know
same
what
here to
that's
you,
like.
but
And it's but like you said, sometimes those challenges that we have as kids can turn into our biggest strength, because the bullying, at least for me, helped me to really start going inward and trying to think about others. Why are they bullying me? Because
mhm,
it seems to be more about them than about me. Same for you. If they were picking on you, it's more that the bully usually is getting bullied at home by someone bigger than them or whoever it is, and they're just hurt, so they're getting that hurt out on the first person they see. So it
yeah,
has nothing to do with you or me or anyone else, any of our listeners that are getting bullied. And it helps develop some inner grit, some people say, or resiliency that will help us later in life. So um and I just thank you for sharing that. That was really cool of you. And also, the other point that you made that was awesome is every kid is starving for just a little bit of lifting them up, encouragement, like, hey, you matter. Or you know what, like what you did, hey, I'm really proud of you. That goes a long way. You're right, especially at that age. It can last the rest of their life, just like you with the bus driver. She
yeah,
said, hey, you know what, go, it's okay, go lock the door so your parents don't kill you,
yeah,
and meet me around the next corner. And you remember that 40 years later. That's
yeah.
huge, right? That's an act of kindness. And now that you do that to your students, good on you, man. That's awesome.
Well, you know, it's not always easy. I tell them though too. And just because I like you doesn't mean that the rules don't apply.
Right,
And
right, right.
and I've been a big firm believer of this, Mike, for a long time. Is that kids need rules, and they do need them to know where is right and where is wrong. And then they also have to understand that too, is that a rule is not always black and white. And it doesn't always go there, because in life it doesn't always go there. You
Right.
know, kids need a lot of good things in their life, and in today's world, there's enough challenges for them on their own. But to be honest with you, kids haven't changed since as I grew up in the '70s. Not to age myself, but I did. You were probably more than the '90s, I'm guessing, to early 2000s because you're a young guy. Um, and they haven't changed. Things around us have changed,
Right.
but you're still a fifth grader is a zygote. They still haven't become that multiple cell membrane yet, and it takes time to do that. And
Right.
everybody's at a different level, and everybody goes and grows at different levels. But there's that good, successful person in there. The one thing I can honestly say is that my parents instilled a lot of confidence in me from the moment say go. And it got me through a lot of those times where the kids were saying something to me. And, you know, listen, I wanted to knock them out half the time, man. And in this town, that was kind of, it is what it is.
Mhm.
It was kind of like, that's how you did it, but half the time you have to battle through those things, and you have to say to yourself, I know that I'm going to be successful. And I honestly, I don't want to say it to sound egotistical because that's not what I wanted to do, is that no matter what, I knew I would, whatever I did. It just was a matter of finding that what I wanted to do, what I wanted from my life. The one thing I tell kids all the time is don't do something because someone else wants you to do it. You got to do it because you want to do it. And you know, you've got to find your voice. And another important piece of that pie is being able to say no to people, being able to say no to friends, especially in bad situations that you put yourself into, because that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Any parent that thinks that that's not going to happen is not in reality. Okay. Because we were kids. I'm sure when you sit around with your friends, you talk about the old days, about some of the stuff that you did that was funny, crazy, stupid. And you're like, wow, how did we do that? Because I know we all do. And when we do those things, it's like one of those memories you have to remember, is that you learned from something, right? And so you don't want it to be that way the whole time. So you have to learn how to you're gonna do mistakes, you're gonna have mistakes. It's a matter of, can you get over those mistakes?
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you're driving the point of resiliency and overcoming the mistakes, and not you're more than your mistakes. And it's important to fail. And it's not, even Michael Jordan, we were talking about him before the podcast, that he, as a Chicago boy growing up there, he didn't make his varsity team in high school. Well, I think he was either a freshman or sophomore. So that's a failure. Did he give up? No. That made him want it even more. And just like you're saying to your kids, you're encouraging them, hey, yeah, sometimes, man, things are tough. Sometimes we get knocked down, but it's about getting back up. And you can keep getting back up because you matter. You have value. You're important. The world needs you. Right. So that's,
Yeah.
you're encouraging them. And every kid, here's one thing that's cool. Josh Shep, this other speaker, he said, every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. And that's so true. That's what you're doing. You're lifting your kids up. You're encouraging them.
Well, I've always had this theory in education. Everybody has to go through it, right? There isn't anyone allowed.
Yeah.
In the United States of America, it's compulsory to go to school till you're 18. Okay.
Right.
A lot of these kids are going to be successes with or without us. Okay. We just need to be a positive light in that short time period of their life that they're there.
Right.
And that's the thing that I always try to tell people, because once you're through it, we want you to come back. We want you to tell us what's going on. We have some great kids. We have some great success stories. And that's the exciting part, is when you see a kid that wasn't the best of students, but they're doing great for themselves. And like, they'll tell you, they go, I learned this, this, and this. And, some guys always have hustle and spit and shine, man. And that goes a long way. How you talk to people goes a long way. The ability to talk to people, because in today's day and age, this thing kills us more than anything. Because I walked into dances at our school, there's 100 kids and they're all on their cell phones. They're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Um, those are things that, like, it still amazes me. But that's what I tell kids. You got to be able to talk to people. You got to be able to handle yourself. You got to be independent, and confidence is the one main thing that is always successful. Hard work is the next main thing, that part of that. And that's, we really push the process. I read that. I can't say that was my idea. That would be lying to you, because it was somebody else's. I read it. It was a wonderful piece of literature a few months ago I was reading, that was about, how do you make your kid successful? And it's not as much as saying, oh, look, Joey got it all A's. It was, man, you worked so hard to get that. That's so awesome, because that's what they have to fall in love with. Listen, Michael Jordan became a great basketball player. He was blessed with talent, number one, but number two, he worked his butt off to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Riley always said, he goes, champions are made when no one's looking. I tell kids that all the time. Like, champions are made when you, instead of sitting on your butt playing Xbox for 5 hours, take an hour, go shoot a basketball.
Yeah.
Or take an hour and read. Take an hour and do any of that stuff. And, listen, I don't want to take you away from your games, because that's just part of being a kid. If you're 45, still sitting on your parents' couch playing games, that might be an issue, but that's up to you if that is or not. But those kids need, just take that time, put that effort into it. When a kid's struggling in school, it's like, all right, here's your way to do this. Can you do this for 2 weeks? And then see how the difference is. If you take 20 minutes a day for each class, even if you don't have homework in it, just take 20 minutes a day and study your math, study your English, keep up on that. I go, you'll become a great student real fast. And it takes time. They don't want to do that. As an ADD kid, my mom used to write things out for me all the time. I still do that. I have to have a list, or my wife will kill me because I forget a lot of things.
No, same. I write everything down too, and it helps a lot. And I notice when I don't, I either write it or type it. And sometimes it's interesting, just the act of physically handwriting. Somehow
Maybe
yeah, locks it in a
integrates into
little
my
more.
mind. Yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners? Any advice or wisdom you'd like to share with them? I mean, you've shared so much already, but
I
any
know. I'm
final
sorry.
thoughts?
I ramble on now. I'm a
No, it's
talker.
great. It's
But,
excellent. It's great.
no, I mean, just keep at it. And, listen, you got a kid, love them, because we're blessed to have them. They can drive you nuts. They can make you, it's the greatest challenge of all times. All right. Let's be honest. I mean, it's the greatest challenge of all times. And each one is different. And each one needs you. And that's the key. They need you. There is no, however you are is perfect to that kid. And, don't forget that, and build confidence and want them to work, want them to want to be something, and what that is up to you, because that definition of what's successful is the worst thing in the universe, because we kind of denote it in America with pure cash, how much money you make. But to me, success is being happy going to work every day. I have a lot of friends that are much more financially successful than I am. All right. But I'm happy every day I go to work. I don't feel like it's a job. It's what I love to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a priest, so it wasn't my cup of tea at that corporation. So I didn't want to go to the army. That wasn't my cup of tea either. I liked, this fit me like a glove. And you got to find your voice, man, and then ride that voice, man. But don't make excuses for not getting to it. That's the other part of it. It's real easy to say, like, it's like every great story ends right when it gets together, right? Every great love story ends right when they get together. You don't know what happens afterwards, right? You don't know how it goes, because life comes at you, and you have to find your voice, stick with your voice. Don't make excuses for why you're not doing what you want to do, and that's the best I can tell people.
Damon, love it, man. Thank you so much for being a part of our
No,
podcast.
thank you very much, man. This is my inaugural podcast moment, so I'm excited.
Yeah, you did great. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, buddy. Have a good one. All right, Mike.